6 months after opening the salon, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This was a fun project, but I just couldn't not do it. And therefore, for the next 10 years, I was basically doing something I didn't want to do and making it look good while I did it.
Welcome to The Slowdown and the final episode of Season 1. I hope you've been enjoying the first season. Please remember to subscribe and leave a review. It really does help a new podcast like this get out into the world. The Slowdown is your time to define success and growth for yourself with a little inspiration from others. And I'd be hard-pressed for who to suggest more than Sharmadean Reid. When I came up with the idea for this podcast, a quote from her was on my vision board. And so I'm delighted to share this episode recorded here at Brazen Studios with entrepreneur, author, and cultural innovator Sharmadean Reid, MBE. We talk about hot girl sabbaticals, why having 2 baths a day is true luxury, how the next wave of feminism should be about equity, and how being a good citizen means to contribute to the city that you're in. So let's get into it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I have a bit of an intro that I will read so that people have a bit of an understanding of who you are and some context. Sharmadean Reid, MBE, is a British author, entrepreneur and cultural innovator, best known for founding Wa Nails, a nail salon that redefined beauty culture in London, and The Stack World, a platform empowering women through networking and business tools. A graduate of Central St. Martin's, Sharmadean has been celebrated for her ability to blend creativity, community, and technology to champion female entrepreneurship. Sharmadean's new book, New Methods for Women, a Manifesto for Independence, was published in June by Penguin, and it features 49 essays that provide actionable advice and personal insights on navigating life, work, relationships, and personal growth. Drawn from her own experiences as an entrepreneur, leader, and co-parent, Sharmadean offers readers practical tools to thrive while advocating for systemic change to better support women's empowerment. Sharmadean has long since shared her learnings across different mediums, and one of the intimate ways is a Sunday night Zoom on the Stack World community in a series called New Methods. Over the years, I've joined many of these Zoom sessions and taken copious notes. So I'm excited to have Sharmadean here with me today. Thank you for entrusting me with your valuable time.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, where to start? Because there's just so many things. I admire you as a business leader, as a thought leader. I subscribe to your newsletter. It is the only newsletter I pay to subscribe for.
Thank you.
So,
I only just started it.
Well, I think it says a lot, about the admiration that I have for you. I admire you as a mother to your beautiful son, Roman, as a friend. We've had some lovely walk and talks together over the years, and I think our first one was actually in Bloomsbury, where we both mentioned how much we love Virginia Woolf. There's an essay she wrote called Street Haunting, a London Adventure in 1927. And one of my favourite lines in that essay is, "Wandering on foot can lead to the wandering of imagination, the activity that makes introspection an outdoor pursuit." What is it about London and walking around it on foot that inspires you?
I love that essay so much because I feel like I'm not haunting, but I am meandering. I just love walking around the city. I love it so much. It sounds so silly is it to have as a hobby or a pastime, but obviously the history is incredible and the multiple layers of history all the way from Roman times to now. The city has changed so much. I really think of myself as a citizen of the world, and I pride myself on being a citizen. And I'm just like, wow, look at London, all these clusters of little villages. Each village has its own identity. Where you live really defines who you are. Like if someone says, I live in, whatever neighborhood, I feel like I know everything about them. So yeah, I'm always wandering around the city. I love it in the rain. I love listening to podcasts while walking.
You've actively chosen to live in London for quite a while. How has that made you who you are?
For 20 years, from 2003 to 2024, I've lived in London. I had a brief period where I've moved back to Wolverhampton twice, 2-3 times actually, and now moving back, this is my 3rd time. I've travelled all over the world. I'm very privileged and lucky considering I didn't go on a plane till I was 23 years old. To have travelled to some incredible cities. But every time I get off the plane at Heathrow, I'm just like, I'm home. It really is the city for me. It's the place for me. And I couldn't imagine permanently living anywhere else. It's the tradition and history, as I mentioned previously, the weirdos, the English weirdos. Just being English is quite funny. Like, I vibe off English memes of what it is to be English.
Well, it's storied, which I think is great, and it provides opportunity, right, for the way that you've been able to run your businesses. You know, London provides a platform to be able to build on.
That's so interesting. I never thought of it like that, ever. I actually think I give to the city a lot. I think, like, London is harsh, like any city is harsh. You know, I've just driven here from my house in the countryside. Pleasant drive, lovely green. Start getting into this ugliness of the outer M25. Gets uglier and busier and noisier. Within 3 minutes of getting out my car on Brick Lane, I hear my first siren. 30 seconds later, my second siren. London and any city can take a lot. I think New York's probably the biggest robber of life, but London comes in pretty close. But I have consistently given to the city, I think, from my very first business, just, you know, less than 5 years after I moved here, I opened up 1L's. Even though there are so many incredible nail salons in London, 1L's really, like, had this unique thing that hasn't, I don't think, quite been replicated. And I always thought of it as a youth club or community centre. I grew up at church, like going to youth clubs, community centres, pathfinders, after church activity. There was just always stuff to do. And when I moved to London, there wasn't that playground for my, like, creative community, because I was still, you know, just graduated from Central St Martin's, the thing that felt like a playground. And the ones that were there were quite masculine. So I think about the first community centres, as I would call them, were just clubs for me. You know, going to Fabric or Herbal or Dreambags Jaguar Shoes, or, you know, think places like that. And then there was this real resurgence of Soho, of going to like Deal Real and Bond and like Hideout and all these super male streetwear shops. And I just kind of wanted to basically do that, but for girls. Like, I loved going to Deal Real on a Friday night. It was a record shop. Every Friday, they'd have an MC. Kanye West came. It was great. You know, all the girls were hanging out and all the boys were chatting them up. But it was in the middle of the day sort of thing. Well, like, I think like maybe 5 o'clock. So yeah, I just wanted to create something like that. And from there, I think I've always tried to think, how can I contribute to this city, not just take away from it? That's very important to me.
I'm really curious how our childhoods affect our awareness and understanding of success. And so I was wondering, you know, little Sharmadean, where and how was she raised? And at what point did you start to understand what success was, or what it was being sold to you as?
I was raised in a big Jamaican family. So you were always sharing and you were always part of a community. You weren't really allowed to be alone. I was really influenced by film and TV and Sky, cable, basically. So I was really influenced by having cable TV at a very early age and seeing really glamorous women on TV. You know, I write about this in my book, which is, if you were British and you only had 3 or 4 terrestrial channels, your view of what is glamorous is basically EastEnders, like Peggy Mitchell. Like, that's as glamorous as you're gonna get. But I had like The Bold and the Beautiful and The Young and the Restless and Dynasty, and my mum loved those Exercise Miami TV tapes, you know what I mean? And we watched a lot of MTV and The Box and VH1, so I also had American music videos. I just got a very wide aesthetic range from a very young age. I remember my mum, she's so creative. She would record all these different like films on VHS, and then record like music videos. And if there weren't any good ones on, we could put the videotape on and just watch music videos all day, me and my brother. So for me, success was archetypes within film and TV, and obviously chat shows like Oprah and Jerry Springer. I'd always look at credits of everything. Credits in magazines, credits at the end of a TV show. I want to know who made everything, because then I knew who was making the money from it.
And how did you find the entrepreneurship path? How did you know that was even an option, that being a founder was a thing and that was something that you wanted to do?
Memory is very unreliable. So on one hand, I did business studies from aged 11 and I loved it. Did business all the way from 11 to 18, did business studies, used to read business newspapers. I used to love watching the news and watching business stuff. But on the other hand, I don't remember sitting there and constructing an idea of myself as a business person. My business happened very accidentally. When I was a kid, I always thought I'd be a media mogul. I thought I'd be a publisher, TV producer, something behind the scenes. Like I thought I'm going to start off as a stylist, a magazine stylist, possibly journalist. And then eventually I'll have my own magazine or publication. That was always what I thought I would be doing. Brief period, I thought I'd probably be doing film costume or something as well, because I loved film. And then with my nail salon, it was very much just a frustration. Couldn't get the nails I wanted. Classic story. Saw a problem, thought I'm going to open my own nail salon. But I didn't really have like a plan or a business plan. And I definitely never moved to London thinking, oh, I'm moving here to start a business. I moved to London to do my degree in fashion, graduate from Central St Martin's, become a stylist, make a magazine. That was it. So my path to entrepreneurship was very accidental, and then it became definitely consumed my life.
When you started out in entrepreneurship and what you were doing, what were the things that you loved about it? Like what drew you into that world, and what were the positive reinforcements of you going, actually, I really enjoy this job?
The things I love are building brands. I'm really good at it. I'm really good at like seeing anything and building an entire story around it. I'm really good at messaging. I'm especially good at trend predicting and trend forecasting and kind of knowing what the zeitgeist is. And I think that to me is the fun part about business. I also love being a shopkeeper. I love talking to strangers in a shop. It makes me very happy. I learn a lot. It's basically data collection, the best data collection you can have. And I really loved, again, contributing to the industry or city, or just being a contributor. Like when you start a business, you are creating something for others, and I think actually that can be a noble thing. I love the designing and branding. That's my favorite bit.
Fonts and colors and getting it all right.
Yeah, and also knowing that every decision is eliciting a feeling, and I love creating environments and spaces and experiences for others. Like I loved every salon I built. I also love working with tradespeople. So I get a real thrill out of working with people who are specialist at what they do. I love when every person has their role and I'm like a conductor, making sure it all comes together. I love launching. That's it.
And my natural follow-up question to that is, there is a shadow side to being a founder, being an entrepreneur. What were those things for you?
I think it's worth defining terms of what I think these things are. I think founders start things. Founders will start things no matter what. Founders will always exist because that's how humans make progress. Whether you're founding a city or a company or whatever, founders are going to found. Entrepreneurs are ones who take the thing they found and turn it into business or commercial activity. I think you can be a founder of something that isn't commercial.
Yep.
Entrepreneurs take it and make it commercial and, form this idea that a founder has created into a business. And then I think the next level is a CEO who's going to create structure around it. So they're going to have processes, scale, company building. And I think that I love founding, and that's it. I was thinking on the drive here, because it was a long drive and I had a lot of thinking time, I was thinking about how I would do everything I've ever done again. So make a little magazine, have a little shop, but I would do it as a rich person, because you found the things and then they may or may not grow, but I want them to exist. And I think if money was absolutely no object, I would happily be a founder of things that were like not commercial at all.
I found a quote from you that I loved a lot. That was, I've not enjoyed being burnt out and valued less. I've not enjoyed having to leave my tiny baby at a daycare centre so that I could put food on the table. I've not enjoyed the loneliness.
When I think about that time period from like 24 to 28, I was just doing what everyone wanted of me because the business was doing so well. Like, everyone was obsessed with this nail salon. I had Roman halfway through that, 26. So I pretty much opened the business and got pregnant almost immediately. And, for anyone who's been a working mother or is a working mother, you know how stressful that can be. But there's also something where you just make it work. Like, I just made it work. And I would say that time was very traumatic for lots and lots and lots of different reasons. But I also think that's just part of my adulthood. I was thinking earlier that, because I'm 40 now and I've gone through the ring of fire and I'm very relaxed, I was thinking, every 40-year-old probably feels like this. It's just what you go through. You get to a point when you're like, no more, and then you prioritize yourself. But all of those things that I did because I just had this audience who really wanted it. And even though I loved nails and I loved my nail salon, it was a total diversion from my life plan that I told you earlier. At no point in my childhood was I like, I'm going to open a salon, ever. Not even a shop. I never thought about it. I thought I'd be, like I said, just working independently or with creatives, a small team behind closed doors. And the one thing I really hated about that type of business is the constant need to replenish to launch. So, I remember when I closed the salon, it was the first Christmas and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have to think of a Christmas campaign. Don't have to think of a Christmas campaign, Valentine's campaign, Mother's Day campaign, spring nails, summer nails, back to school nails. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. The relentlessness of like feeding the marketing machine is exhausting. And I just don't work like that. Like, I don't want to have to. And by the way, I can work like that. And I did. And I always had good ideas for stuff. I remember like we were one of the first brands to do like, love yourself for Valentine's Day and like come to the nail salon if you haven't got a date. We always thought of cool things because of my, my references are wide ranging, but it's just this exhaustive consumerist treadmill of like, what more messaging can you tell someone to get them to buy more shit? I really didn't enjoy that. And if you didn't do it, people thought something was wrong with the business. If you didn't do a Valentine's campaign, people are like, oh, something must have happened to the business. But how about, it's just, I'm taking a rest. This is like long. Being a working mom, all of these things, they don't necessarily matter if you're doing the thing that you want to do for yourself. But I would say 6 months after opening the salon, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This was a fun project, but I just couldn't not do it. And therefore, for the next 10 years, I was basically doing something I didn't want to do and making it look good while I did it. I definitely had moments where I was like, okay, I'm going to grow this business. I want to be the best nail salon ever. I want to take over, But mostly that wasn't the vibe. Mostly I just wanted to do forest school with Roman and write a book. I found a diary from 2009, which is like the year after I opened Salon, and I said I want to write a novel. I really wanted to make a documentary, a music documentary. I really wanted to keep styling. I didn't, in my heart, want to be this like big time successful entrepreneur, but I kind of kept telling myself I did in order to do it, because otherwise why would I get up every day? If I didn't have this goal of like, I'm going to scale to 100 nail salons all over the UK, or, you know, I'm going to build a product brand that's going to get to like 50 million in revenue. If I didn't have those statements floating around the front of my brain, then I would not get out of bed and do it, because I'm quite a lazy person, right? Like, I need these things for constant motivation. And then also I'm highly motivated by competition, if that makes sense. Like, I'm motivated by seeing what other people are doing and thinking, I could do that, or I could do it in a different way or a better way. But they weren't really core drivers. And the reason I know that to be true is because at so many points in my life, I quit things that I just don't care about anymore. I just end them. Once I've exhausted the excitement, that's a like signal to me that I'm done with this now. And I think one of the things I'm excited about for the next like few decades of my life is, okay, how can I do all the things I like doing, but not just let them die when I get bored of them? Because I feel like I'm not robbing, but I'm taking away things. Like, if Winehouse was around today, people would still go.
100%.
So it's like, what? I've just robbed everyone of that incredible experience. You know, it's really funny when people who are like in their, let's say they're 25 or something, and they went to the salon, or when they were children, and I was like, wow, I'm actually old. Like, you're an adult now, and you came as a child. And I was like, oh, what a shame.
Well, you know, I asked all of that because there was another quote from you that I loved, which was around what you just said, which is, a mere 6 months after being an entrepreneur, I knew it wasn't for me. And yet I continued because the image of being a founder was an attractive one.
Oh, good to know I'm consistent.
Yeah, good to know you're consistent. You said, I don't know a single female founder right now who is fully enjoying it and has designed a life in a way that they are content with, and who lives without the fear of either running out of money or that they're being a bad friend, mother, or partner. Why do you think that founder image is so attractive in our culture?
I remember when it was our WAR Christmas dinner, and we had like 25 staff or something. It was quite a big team, and we had a whole bunch of other freelancers, which I invited to the Christmas party. And the WAR staff Christmas party was like all Asian themed. So I said you could come dressed as any country from Asia, and we're going to go for Basaba, you know, always a favourite. Okay. And then I took them to a secret karaoke bar in Soho, which they were like so delighted with, and it was just bloody great. I remember posting a photo of this Christmas party, which would have been like maybe 2016, 17. And there was this person in America who I knew through internet stuff, Kristen Noel Crawley, who I'd always and still do think is incredible. She's so cool, hot, a mother, businesswoman, all of it. And she commented on the photo saying, wow. And I remember thinking, oh my God, Kristen thinks I'm a real businesswoman because I've got 25 employees. And, you know, she's like I don't know her very well, but I know her. And that praise, that positive reinforcement is very alluring. It's very intoxicating. I was like, wow, Kristen thinks I'm impressive because I have this team, which was something I'd never, I didn't do things for that. So I'd never really reflected on it. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like when we got our beauty stack office. Do you remember how amazing that was? I was just like, we need a big space because we want to host events. And if this all goes well, we'll probably grow to 100 staff. So I'm going to get the biggest office we can afford. And I remember everyone walking into the office and being like, wow, she's a real founder she's a mogul with a huge office. And it's really funny because these things that are signifiers of levels of success, when you're praised for it, it reinforces it, even if some of those things might be bad things.
You're chasing approval from higher and higher people there.
Yeah. And it's almost like when someone has been starving themselves for a month and then you see them and you're like, oh my God, you look so thin, you look great. And they're like, oh, it was all worth it. You know what I mean? And in fact, that's another thing we used to say on team trips. It was like, never comment on anyone's body, positive or negative, because you might be reinforcing bad habits. And I feel like all of the praise about me as a female founder would be reinforcing bad habits. So sometimes praising these certain elements of like hustle culture and productivity and capitalism effectively, you might be reinforcing negative things. So when I talk to people who need support in their business or just friends or whatever, I'm always like, well, is this what you want to do? Really? Or are you doing it to get to the next step? Excuse me. Do you understand what the next step is? Rather than just being busy doing nothing. If you're like, the next step is this, and therefore I need to do this, then by all means, work your 12-hour days.
Tell me more about Hot Girl Sabbatical. Where did this concept come from? What was the thing that you were trying to share with people?
I was saying recently to a friend that I think every single summer we have a trend which basically is a derivative of the it girl. We've had the it girl labelled since the 90s and 2000s. If you think of what the original it girls were, they were always having fun. They were a little bit messy and they kind of did whatever the fuck they wanted. And we've seen on social trends various incarnations of it. Hot girl summer, to me, same thing. Brat summer, same thing. Hot girl summer, I think, was 2021. Don't quote me on this, but the following year, I was like, it's really about Hot Girl Sabbatical. It's really about relaxing, resting, doing absolutely nothing, taking time off. But I knew I couldn't do that because I just started the stack. So I wrote, do you remember in the app we had a feature which we actually, we sunsetted the feature, which was you could write a goal for yourself and it would appear on the dashboard like every day. And mine was, get your ducks in a row for a 2024 Hot Girl Sabbatical. And even though I didn't plan a sabbatical, and I would say I've not actually taken a sabbatical, I've been working. Like most, from the outside, it would look like I'm working exactly the same, but I would say I'm not really. I'm being lazy and doing the bare minimum to make it look like I'm busy. I've just, through various circumstances, been a bit more relaxed this year and I feel way better for it. And that's where it came from. And we had a dinner for it because I love thinking about things and then talking to my community about them. So I wrote the essay, Hot Girl Sabbatical. This makes me really happy. I like writing something, an idea. I like putting it out. And then I like hosting something where more people can talk about it together. So after that, we had a dinner at Coco in Camden. Hot Girl Sabbatical dinner, beautifully dressed by the team, all the colours. I designed the menus. And then we made it like a bit of an MC dinner where everyone was talking about their thoughts and feelings. And I like creating spaces for people to do that.
What are your thoughts on the other kind of trends that have emerged since post-COVID of lazy girl jobs and soft life? And do you think that's a reaction to what we were talking about earlier, where we were told that to be the glamorization of the exited founder, people are starting to share more vulnerable stories of kind of maybe anti-hustle culture?
I think that they are all basically edges of the same coin, which is that we're starting to realise, which is totally right in our human historical timeline, that because of the hidden costs of what it is to be a woman, it doesn't really matter how hard you work. And I think that the lazy girl and the soft life and all of that is just all different ways of saying the same thing, which is no matter how hard I work, the forces are against me, so there's no point in me working. I see us forking in sort of a couple of directions, and then hopefully those two forks coming back together, which is kind of how I'm thinking about the next decade of my life. The fork being this path of lazy girl, soft life, hot girl, sabbatical is leading women towards taking more time and pleasure for themselves. I've been very preoccupied with this idea of pleasure over wellness. I don't really care for wellness. I think about how do we go above and beyond getting us to just a good baseline, which I think is what a lot of self-care and wellness was about, to then not going off on a different fork to optimization and productivity, because it's very easy for wellness and self-care to turn into another productive thing, but actually going on the path of pleasure. So from, this lineage is like a family tree of trends, soft life, lazy girl, and then being like, actually, what can I do for me? What feels good for me? What is pleasurable for me? And then coupled with, and this is what I'm saying, the other fork of the productivity or the working or business or hustle. How do I do jobs, find careers, start businesses that enhance my pleasure instead of taking it away? And I think when people think about pleasure and business, they always think about sex stuff. But I'm talking about just general coziness and indulgence and sensuality and all of these things that are both masculine and feminine energies that I think that we've lost in our pursuit of hustle and productivity.
You've also talked a lot about rhythm and life and menstrual cycles and doing things in our own way. And you talked about, instead of having a midlife crisis, I'm having a midlife slowdown. If you could explain that and kind of what has this introduction of softness and slowness into your life look like?
Well, first I left London, 10 months ago. I live in a big farmhouse with my brother, which in itself is just so wonderful and cozy. I operate on a very intuitive rhythm. So I just kind of do what I want to do. And I pick up each project as I feel like picking it up, which isn't conducive, by the way, to successful business, FYI. When people are waiting on emails or messages, I don't get stressed about it. I'm just like, I'll get to that when I'm ready to get to it. I've always taken lots of baths and gone to the spa a lot, but now I could take 2 baths a day, frankly.
That's true luxury.
That is true luxury. True luxury to me is when my time is my own. That is exactly how I define it. If my time is 100% my own, I'm living a rich life. But also I've not been living a rich life, if I'm honest. I reduced all my living expenses so that I could choose the projects that I wanted to do and not have to keep taking jobs to pay bills. And yeah, I don't know how else to say it. I love my life. I take a lot of pleasure now in coming to London and choosing what restaurant to eat at and having really decadent meals. Bathing and food, books, those are my pleasures.
Speaking of books, why did you decide to write a book? Why that medium?
Well, I read a lot and I kept thinking, I'm reading all this amazing stuff about how to live a good life or be a good human. Almost all of it's written by men, which is perfectly fine, but then they're not necessarily acknowledging or empathizing with some of the things that I might be experiencing. So that was a big reason for me wanting to write my book. I then chose the format based on books that I'd really enjoyed. So 48 Laws of Power is pure chance that I've got 49 essays in there. I really loved Ray Dalio's Principles, which is organised into principles. I really love reading Stoic philosophy, which tends to be organised in books, the book of this, the book of that. After I wrote the 5 sections, which I felt was the journey of what it was to be a woman from like 0 to 40, I then wrote underneath every single principle that I thought was important to my own development, things that I do over and over again, and also things that my friends ask me all the time. It's funny with new methods because you've been coming for a few years now, and for some reason, these things never get old. They're like as old as time. So yeah, that was it really. And there's 2 essays that I probably, after I handed in the manuscript, there were like 2 things that I was like, oh, can't believe I didn't write about that. One of them was ownership and equity, which I added a essay in my newsletter on, the 50th essay. And then the other one, which I am going to write, was on pleasure. And I thought, oh, it's so funny how I don't talk about pleasure or ownership when both of those have been so important to my life. Pleasure, because getting what I want in the bedroom, I think, is critical to me functioning well outside of the bedroom. Secondly, with ownership, not being ripped off by investors, partners, co-founders, whatever, I think is also critical to women's mental well-being. There have been so many women over the years I've spoke to who've been cheated out of equity in various ways, and it's a business trauma. It's a form of trauma. So yeah, those if I can finish those essays on time, they're going to go into the paperback. My publisher said they'll squeeze them in.
On the equity one, and I read the article that you wrote and I loved it. Do you think that's a potential kind of win-win scenario? Because you mentioned women and all the unspoken labor and the things that we do, whereas equity and kind of ownership is a way to win back time because you're not being paid for by the hour that you're doing the thing.
I think equity is the next wave of feminism completely. I think there is no other thing in feminism or in feminist literature that hasn't already been said or done before. And even equity in itself is not a new concept within feminist writing, but it's not become a wave. It's not become something that people do or that they think of as a normal thing. And I feel like right now in the West, many women understand what their rights are, even if they are not emotionally or mentally able to always verbalize them. I think they fundamentally know what they are because media and literature and campaigning and policy have all led us to there. So even though we have the Equal Pay Act, it's like almost 50 years old, women are still not paid equally. So there's a difference between the policy and then the culture shifting. And I think we are just about catching up with the culture shift of what the wave of women's rights in the 70s gave us, which is why I mentioned earlier that Soft Life and Lazy Girl is actually on the right timeline of human progression. What I meant by that was that from the women's lib movement of the 1970s, it takes that long for culture to shift, to catch up with the policy change and the ideas change. What I'm excited about and what I'm writing about now is I think equity and ownership will be really pivotal and important for women's rights because it allows them to be able to have the economic independence, to have freedom of choice, to have their own time, to escape situations, whether they are abusive or just familial situations that they don't want to be in, and really have the power to choose what they want. Equity also means that you're not hustling in the same way, because fundamentally it's about creating a portfolio of revenue streams where you can pull different levers on how much work you want to do. So in my next book, which I'm writing about all of this, a fun section of the book is intellectual property. Like, how exciting is it to make something once and get paid for it forever? Like, that's the dream, babes. So I really, really see ownership and equity as such a a key thing in the messaging that I'll be talking about over the next like decade, rather than me talking about how to build a business or found a company or raise investment. The new things I really care about is, how does one acquire land? How does one acquire property? You know what I mean? These are the things that I'm like, okay, let me experiment with it and then see what happens and then tell everyone what I learnt.
I was about to ask, what are the practical applications of equity if a woman was interested in knowing what kind of ways she could go about getting equity?
I'm a big believer that there are no like mega original ideas, right? You're building on a body of work. And in the similar vein that I say new methods for women is like any leadership, philosophy, business book, but in the vein for women, but in the vein of ones that have been around for 2,000 years, I would say equity and ownership builds upon financial empowerment literature like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or The Psychology of Money, whereby there's a handful of ways to create wealth in the capitalist era that we have. And, you know, it's land and property, it's savings, investments, it's intellectual property, it's starting a business or company ownership or owning a company. And loads of people have written about it. What I'm quite interested in exploring is, because this is always how my brain works, is what is the historical things that led us to here first? Let me just understand how women weren't allowed to own land for like 804 years. For 804 years, couldn't own land when land ownership became a thing. And then I'm like, okay, so now I know the history. Who were the people in history who made that change? Because I just care to know. And then once I know all of that, it kind of emboldens me on my mission to be like, well, I'm going to own some land, because now I know that it was 804 years and that these were the women who changed the laws and that this is what it cost them. And by the way, like the Married Women's Property Act, it took like a good 50 years, like I say, for the full thing. The first version of the act had very limited stuff. So, you know, you had to be married to own property. You know, the types of property you still couldn't own. And then later on, there were more things added to the act, which expanded the freedoms of women. And then I'm like, okay, now when you look at land and property, the history of, how does that impact women's businesses? Because people forget that owning a property allows you to have collateral to start a business. It allows you to access capital, to raise debt. You know what I mean? All of these different ways to raise money to fund your business.
What are the top 3 things you would have done at 25 now?
I would have, with all of my friends from university, made an agreement to all move to the same building or street or postcode. I think losing community as you get older is devastating. You get to your mid-30s, you can't even organise a dinner with your friends because everyone's busy. Secondly, I would have bought a very tiny, shitty flat in London, because I always had over and above taste, and I would have preferred to have rented a fancy flat than buy a shitty one that I could afford. But really, if I bought a shitty one at 23 when I could afford it, look at what I'd have now. Mm. And then the third thing I would say is, if you save regularly from age 25 to 35 in your pension, you could probably not really put any more money in, and you'd still get more money than someone who saved from 35 for another 30 years. So saving for just 10 years from 25 to 35 and then stopping saving completely at 35 wields you more money at 60 than someone who saves from 35 till they're 65. Do you get what I mean? Because of compound interest. Yeah. But I never knew that. I didn't even know what compound interest was. You know, I show my son his junior ISA every week. I'm like, this is an ISA. that I can't touch till you're 18, and look how much it's grown. It's grown 8% this month. How do you feel about that, Roman? He's like, oh, okay. But I'm like, just getting him familiar with it, because I wasn't familiar with it.
That's what I mean, yeah.
And I think those are the 3 things I would do. Live near my friends, possibly buy in the same building, buy something really small when you can afford it, as early as you can afford it, and also start investing and saving at a really young age, knowing if you put that money away now, the compound interest will do the work for you.
Great advice. I also think about this thing of friends and where they live, because I find that now in my 30s, my friends are scattered all over London and it is hard to get together. But if we had all said, you know, central London is expensive, it's really hard to buy in zones 1, 2, maybe even 3, let's all move to this place in zone 3. If everybody said, this is the street, cross street neighborhood that we're interested in, we all went there. It'd be fun. And also we could afford to all buy houses there.
Whenever you see communes or cooperative living or anything on social, and you look at the comments underneath, the comments are like, this would never work. You know, what about when you have arguments? And I'm thinking, what, you mean the fact that we lived like this for 300,000 years in small nomadic groups? You think it won't work now, today? Like, I feel that people are very skeptical of that type of thing when you say, why don't we all live together, or why don't we all live near each other? This Englishness of like curtain twitching, but I don't want everyone in my business. I do. I want everyone to know how I am. I want everyone to keep their eye out for my mental health, to make sure that I'm safe and healthy and I'm eating right and looking after me. I want loads of people around me like that. And I think if you said what you just described, everyone moved to zone 3 in this area, what would happen is you would build businesses, you would build the coffee shop, you would have a creative collective, you probably have a say on what the nursery is like when your kids are going to school. My friend actually built a school in Haggerston because she moved to the area. She bought a house in London Fields, Philippa, and she was like pregnant, and she went, well, I'm in Hackney and there's no schools here that I want to send my child to right now. I'm going to build one. So she built a school on Hackney Road, on Kingsland Road. Do you get what I mean? So the minute that you set roots together as a community and you start to contribute to that and, you know, design the environment around that, I think that's an incredible thing. Like, I'm a big believer of 15-minute city. Like, I don't think it works to live in zone 3, 4, 5, 6, or live in any area and then just commute and you literally do nothing for the area. Like, you leave the house at 8, you return at 8, and for those 12 hours you're not actually redistributing your wealth or spending your dollars in the area. Like, I'm not a fan of that. But I think if you can build a collective community in an affordable place, as you can tell, these things I'm quite passionate about.
I went to a book launch on this little street in Leighton, and it was a female bookshop owner, and she said, me and a load of other women live on this road and we love this area, and we kind of turned this little old high street into a thriving high street, and it has in London statistically the most amount of female businesses on a road. Francis Street?
Yeah, Francis. My friend lives on it.
And she said it's beautiful because I've, 3 kids, and I come into the bookshop and I know that the female founded businesses all around me, if I need to drop off my kids at that cafe, that I can do that.
And it's pedestrianised as well. There's an area of it, I believe, that's pedestrianised. That is amazing. And it's taken a while.
Yeah.
Like, my friend bought her house there, must be 10 years now. And she's just had her baby. So it's like, you've got to have faith and make a bet on it. You've got to trust and believe that other people, if you go, other people will go. And it goes back to what we said at the beginning of the conversation about being a founder and being a pioneer. Like, it's scary to make those leaps and make those steps, but I think someone has to do it, and someone has to corral the troops and make that inspirational messaging. Like, I would love to have my own town. If I could have my own town with its own motto, logo, banner.
Of course, that's the first thing you think of, town branding.
Yeah, town branding.
What's on the insignia?
You know, the insignia, the charter, what we stand for. I know I've made it when I founded my own town.
Yep. I will come and visit
New Alexandria, I'll call it.
Nice.
But you know, I'm going to buy a bit of woodland with a group of women if you want in.
I'm interested.
Woodland. It's fairly affordable. It's good for rest and nature. Get 1,000 women. Not even 1,000. Get 100 women to put £1,000 in each. We buy woodland for 100 grand. It's our wood. You can go there anytime and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Within 2 hours of London.
And I can totally see how this is a natural evolution from what you've been doing. Community, women, empowerment.
Are you going to come?
I'm down. Absolutely.
It's like, what can you do with a grand of, you know, you can't really angel invest it at the moment. You could put it in your savings, or you could come and buy a bit of woodland with me.
We've got to come up with other things we can do in this woodland.
Loads of stuff you can do. Part of my healing journey, I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in the book. It's so funny because getting mentally well felt like a full-time job. When I look at the book, and I'm thinking of all the stuff I did, it was constant. I was constantly reading, listening to podcasts, trying stuff out. And one of the things I did was I went to a forest in Tunbridge Wells and I made fire with a bushcraft guy. There was like me and 2 other randoms on the course. I didn't tell anyone. I got all the gear on. I got on the train because I couldn't drive then. And I remember just being in this wood, having to collect 3 different types of wood to do a bow and drill, getting my Kindle, taking all day. I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe our ancestors stayed alive having to do this every single day. Your entire day is about making a fire so you don't die. I was so grateful to my Neanderthal ancestors for that. But then also I remember going home and feeling so happy and accomplished and well. And I'm like, imagine if the wood served no other purpose apart from having a space where if you feel ridiculously overwhelmed, and a lot of people who live in London, especially if you're born and bred London, don't know where to go in the countryside, you could just go to the wood and, you know, clear some trees and stuff. Sort some paths out.
What we're touching on is capitalism doesn't want much of this. It's an individualistic society thing. It doesn't want you communing with other people and making things cheaper or creating a society that's based on gifting or reciprocal giving of services. Like, it wants everything priced up. And nature is free, and so it doesn't like that either. This podcast is really about these things, finding ways to slow down. And I'm wondering, how do you slow down in your day-to-day when you can't go out into the woods and make wood for a day? Are there practical tools and things that you do on a day-to-day?
I'm a big believer in not letting things get to the point where you feel like you're going to explode, like your pot lid is bubbling. So I've always taken time to myself at various points of a day. If you have worked with me in the past, you'll know that I would be having a meeting and I'll say, let's just pop into this gallery, and I'll just go to the gallery for half an hour. People think of these things like going to the gallery, walking to the river, popping into Hyde Park as things that they need to schedule an hour or 2 hours for, when I'm more like a nibbler at these things, you know. I'm just like, I've no qualms about driving and pulling over my car at Bayswater and being like, if I can just get into Hyde Park for only 10 minutes, that's actually fine. I go, get an ice cream, look at the birds, look at the people, get back in my car. And that's how I slow down. So rather than like running really, 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 really fast and then needing to press the brakes really hard by going on a retreat, I am constantly pressing the brakes throughout the day. English people been coming to Ibiza for a retreat and escapism for a long time. They go to Ibiza and basically it's like a recovery from their current life instead of bringing those elements into their current life. So I try to not use other countries or places as a pure escape, but almost like, how can I bring these things into my life every single day? So like, you'll open my handbag and there will be a pine cone in there, because I'm like, I shouldn't have to wait until I'm having a breakdown before I go to a forest and pick up a pine cone. I should just be able to have these little things each day.
You should be able to bring these things into your everyday life wherever you live. It sort of parallels a feeling I had in my 20s where I went in search of myself in other countries. So it was always, I'm going to Bali to find myself. I'm going to America to find out who I am. Once I get there and spend enough time there, it will be clear to me who I am. And that obviously wasn't true. It meant coming back to London, everything kind of crashing and burning around me, feeling like a total failure, moving back into my parents' council flat in Islington and being like, okay, everything that I want, I can build myself.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
It's not location specific, my goals and my wishes.
But I'm, often say that I am contradictory because I can hold more than one idea in my head at the same time. Environment is a really important thing to shift your mindset. And I would say shifting your environment is the easiest way to change your mood. So, and also travel for me is like oxygen and always have been. Like, traveling is so critical to feeding my curiosity about the world. And I've definitely booked hotels to just sleep and recover in various places. But I always try, as I said earlier, think about how can I make this part of my daily life. And you get a facial and then you go out of the facial place and you're like, oh my God, it's dirty out here and now I've ruined my facial. That's what I think traveling to other countries and coming back's like.
What I was going to add, to totally agree with what you said, is I had the realization that I don't need these countries in order to escape and find myself. And once I was secure and whole in myself, then I now, like you, every single year, it's probably every 8 weeks, I need to go somewhere to expand my horizons. Like, I can get very regimented and strict with how I do my day. I really enjoy my habits and patterns and the way that I do things. And actually, I need that. Go to Colombia by yourself, plonk yourself somewhere where you don't know anybody, and see that the universe will hold you. You don't have to control and organize every minute of your day and look at the magical things that happen when you don't. And that I can only do that when I travel.
Yeah, I love it so much. In my mind, I've always got a spectrum from -10 to 0 to +10. And I'm constantly calibrating, like, where am I on the spectrum? And I think the thing about travel is, if you're traveling to a country, it's good for your emotional state to be at 0 so that you're not just extracting. Do you know what I mean? So everything from here now is additive. Like, you go to a country with fresh eyes and excitement. I will say, though, that when I was on a -8 and I went to Jamaica, it was healing and brought me up to 0. But I've gone to Jamaica loads of times.
Yeah, it goes right back to what you said at the beginning, where wherever you are, the city that you're in, you don't just want to be extracting, you also want to be giving. And my last question, which I've asked everybody, is if I had to watch one film, read one book, or look at one piece of art that would help me understand you better as a person, what would it be?
The movie Boomerang with Eddie Murphy and Halle Berry and Robin Givens.
Why?
It's a movie in the 90s. I think it was 1993. It's an all-black cast. One of the first movies of that era, It's about an ad agency where they're coming up with a perfume campaign for Grace Jones's perfume. And she's just hilarious in it. Eddie Murphy's a player, obviously, and has to choose between Robin Givens' character, who's a high-powered businesswoman, very smooth, very slick, very in control, and Halle Berry, who's a creative artist. She works for the company as well. And I love it because I see a bit of myself in every single character. In Grace Jones and her sensuality and desire for like extraness, being as extra as possible. Robin Givens' character with the executive and kind of the coldness to men that she has. Halle Berry in the creative artist with a heart. And then Eddie Murphy, who feels like he has to make all of these choices. And even if we take the gender roles out of it, because I believe that within that movie, everyone is playing a masculine and feminine role in some way. I just think from the music and the costumes and the storyline and the location, the fact that everyone's black and it's an ad agency, it's just very me. It's very me. And you know, the fact that there are two wolves within me and this one wants to just be a homely, creative artist girl, and then one of them wants to be this powerful, you know, slightly aloof woman. Yeah, I think I love it for that.
Thank you for sharing. I'll definitely watch it.
Do you know what? Now that I say it, it's all my star signs, actually. It's like Halle Berry's probably my Taurus, earthiness. Robin Givens is my Scorpio energy, which is ambitious, empowered, and Grace Jones is my extra she's so extra in that movie. It's so great. And yeah, I think my Gemini, Taurus, Scorpio are all in those women.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. This episode was hosted and created by me, Tiana Tambridge. It was produced by Whitney Rosenthal. Sound and video recording, mixing, editing, and mastering is by Brazen Studios. Cover art designed by Natalia Ruche. Please subscribe to The Slowdown to be notified of upcoming episodes, tell a friend, and leave a review, because it really helps a new podcast like this get out there into the world. And remember, we're all heading to the same destination, and there is no prize for getting there early, so we might as well slow down.